Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm James, your everyday cook. Today we are making bruschetta. I think it's called bruschetta, but I say it bruschetta. Come cook with me. But before we do, make sure you like this video, share it, subscribe of course, and then hit the notification bell so you get notified to come cook with me again. Okay, so the first thing for the bruschetta is the bread. So you can use any bread you want. I found this bread and it's whole grain. You can use white bread even if you had white bread, but any kind of bread is fine. And then anytime you're cutting bread, you want to use a serrated knife because it doesn't, well, I'll just test this. So you look how it crushes it down and it kind of smushes the bread. The serrated knife will actually cut through the bread without crushing it. So you just cut about 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch pieces. We're going to toast these up in the oven. And depending on how many people you might be cooking this for, or making this for, you might need 2 loaves. This is just me today for lunch. So 1 loaf is definitely good. And now that I got this grainy loaf, I realize all the grains, once I'm cutting it, go everywhere, but we are everyday cooks and that's what happens. We learn. And I did have a smaller loaf of bread that I bought, but I realized it was going to be too small for the bruschetta that I'm making. Sorry, running into the camera. Because the circumference was not big enough for the tomatoes and everything that I have with our bruschetta. So I decided to get a bigger loaf of bread just so you could have, put the topping on the bread and have the bruschetta. So just keep that in mind. When you are making it, you can make the tomatoes larger, smaller, but so we have. So I'll finish this. I'm sure Maggie will come and get this at some point because she likes the bread. She knows what I'm cooking, so. All right. Put that aside for her, or for me, because we need to eat too. So I have a sheet tray that I will just put this bread on. And you can cut this at an angle to where they're more elongated. You can cut them just straight down so they're round, however you want to present your bread for your bruschetta. Sometimes they all fit, sometimes they don't. So it's almost like bread Tetris, a little puzzle. And if they don't, you can always scooch them around. Okay, so put that there. I have a rag because I don't like all these crumbs. I know we're everyday cooks, but it happens. Plus, I don't want to sweep afterwards. So, anyways, another story. All right, so we have our bread that is sliced. So there's 2 things you can do. You can just drizzle. Well, that bottle's hard to handle. You can just put your fingers over your olive oil and just drizzle. Which is pretty simple, right? I find. You can control the oil, hold it up high so the drippage is uniform. Or if you want to, and you don't like that method, which is perfectly fine, you can pour some oil in a bowl with a pastry brush. I actually have a rubber one too. You can dip it in oil and pat. Whatever you prefer, whatever makes you more comfortable. So those are your 2 options. But for now, I just drizzled it. And then along with oiling the bread, we're going to salt and pepper them so they're nicely seasoned. It's got a little salt, Mr. Pepper. And then you're just going to, whenever you salt items, you always want to hold it high so that way there's even distribution. Because when you're low, it could be a saturated amount. Don't mean to use a big word, but. And then just pepper lightly, because salt and pepper is in the bruschetta. So you just want to lightly season these. And always salt first, then grab your pepper, because if you grab the pepper first and then grab the salt, you get pepper in your salt. And I've learned that too many times. So I have my oven preheated to 375, and we'll toast these about 15-ish minutes. So by the time they come out, our bruschetta will be ready. So let's toast this bread. Oven's hot. So now on to the bruschetta. So we've done our bread. It's toasting in the oven at 375. Now we're going to make our bruschetta. So I did have a bowl. See, that's why we mise en place. And that's one of the things that I try to preach and practice is mise en place, because you want everything in its place. You want everything that you're going to make, all the ingredients together so you don't forget anything. We're everyday cooks. It happens, but mise en place is really important. So we have grape tomatoes, and I normally do 1 container of grape tomatoes or tricolor tomatoes or even a regular tomato, but I'm making enough for lunch tomorrow as well, because this actually carries over for 2 or 3 days. So if you make a big batch of it, the more it sits, kind of the better it gets. It's great fresh, but you can definitely have it day 2, day 3. So I have some grape tomatoes that I will just have. And you're probably asking, James, what if I don't have grape tomatoes or, you know, the tricolor tomatoes? Use a regular tomato, but just like our salsa video, remember how it has all the moisture inside? You want to remove that with a spoon. Eek. It gets a little juicy, but you want to remove that extra membrane with the liquid. See, it's all liquidy here. You want to remove that, and then you can cut your tomato into dices, preferably, or chunks, whatever you want to do. But you can do that way if you don't have grape tomatoes or you don't want to use them. This is the perfect kind of cut for the bruschetta. But I like to use the grape tomatoes. That's just a personal preference. And again, I did something that I preach but did not practice, was to use your knife to move ingredients. You always want a bench scraper. I will further prove this point because yesterday I was making soup for a friend, and I used my knife and I cut myself because I thought, you know, I'll just use this to scrape up the ingredients and, you know, yada, yada, yada. So always use a bench scraper to pick up ingredients, transfer them into another bowl. That way you don't dull your knife, and then also you don't cut yourself. So practice what you preach, James. I will. I will, I will, I will. So, but for the grape tomatoes, we don't need it, so we'll just cut these in half. These are nice. You can cut them in quarters if you want to, too. Again, proportionate to your bread size and then the size of the ingredients. And I did rinse these, by the way. I just put them back in their little containers. And then sometimes you're going to get little smushy-wishy ones that I don't really like to use. Love bruschetta. This is one of my favorites. This is a good, like the salsa, people request this bruschetta, and once you make it, you can do different variations, but this is a good potluck meal. This is a good appetizer meal. So first container's done. We will recycle that. Second. And these were actually buy one, get one today at this local grocery store. So that is why I got them. These actually could be quartered. They're pretty large grape tomatoes, but whatever you want. I'm not going to go back and recut them. And you don't have to go fast with this. I know sometimes I get pretty quick with what I'm doing, but we're not in a rush. You know, this can be made in advance, so you can take your time with these. Especially if you're practicing knife skills, if you're a new cook, you know, it's nice to take your time to kind of get the system going. These are bad. Won't use those. Recycle. Okay. So the next thing for our bruschetta is roasted red peppers in a jar. Jar trick. Hit it, and it pops right open. So I'll strain these. They have a lot of liquid in all their crevices because they are roasted red bell peppers whole. So you kind of want to shake them out. Right. And there's about 3 whole red peppers in this jar. So what I like to do is they're whole. Just split open a little bit and roasted. So I like to press them flat so we have a safe cutting environment. So press them flat. And then I like to move one over to the side too. And then we're going to cut these in strips. Remember, fingers back, rocking our knife. And then for this, I like to turn them and then do almost the same width as the tomato. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll use those tomatoes. Making a lot of recipes today, so stay tuned. And then, honestly, you don't want a lot crowding your cutting board because then you can run into your knife hitting things, but I'm just trying to show you guys. So then again, strips, and then this one was shorter, so we'll do like 2 cuts. And then this one we'll move over. This one's a weird one, but okay. And remember, while we're doing this, to keep an eye out for your bread, you can set a timer because that will really crisp up pretty quickly, especially without olive oil. So let's actually check on that really quick. Yeah, we're doing good. So I'm gonna get a little rag first. Recycle. All right, because that does have a lot of liquid in it. And that's why I like the smaller tomatoes too for the bruschetta, because everything releases a little bit of liquid. And that's why I advise, if you do use a regular tomato or Roma tomato, make sure you core out the guts of the tomato so then that's not so wet, because it does get pretty wet, just like the salsa video. So next we have our red onion. It's red. Well, it's purple, but it's red. We're only going to use half of this, not even half, because this is a pretty big onion that we'll thinly slice. So normally I preach, I like similar cut sizes because it all cooks evenly, you know, all that. But when you thinly slice these onions, it just adds just a little bit of oomph to the dish, to the bruschetta. And I've not had anybody ask for anything different. So thinly slice your onions. And I don't do a ton because this red onion is pretty potent. Like I said, about a quarter. So you can leave them whole like this, but for the size of what I'm doing, I'm actually going to cut the slices in half. So that way you get a little bite of onion. And again, as this sits, these red onions will become a little softer. So they're easier. They're not as oniony. I guess that's a term. So about a quarter of a large red onion. Put that in there. This is our bowl that we will use later. Okay. The third, fourth, fifth item that I use is sun-dried tomatoes that are already julienned. When I was first creating this bruschetta years ago, I would buy the whole sun-dried tomatoes in all oil, but then when I tried to cut them, they were almost too tough to cut, and I just found, even if it's more expensive, I buy the julienned already tomatoes. So I'm going to drain these, and I'm using about half a jar. These get a little messy because they are in oil. So about a half a jar goes in, just to amp up that tomato flavor. Okay, so the sun-dried tomatoes are in there. The next, this is a chefy little trick that I've started doing. So I used to buy bulbs of garlic that are already peeled. I hate peeling garlic. Honestly, I hate peeling garlic. But to not throw away garlic because you don't use a whole bag of garlic cloves, I actually process it in my food processor and I froze it. Freezer cam. And I put it in a little bag and I pressed it flat. So anytime I need chopped garlic, A, I don't need to chop it. B, I can just pull it out of the freezer, put it in a bowl to thaw, and then it's always fresh. So that's kind of my chefy tip, and that's what I did this morning. I pulled some off of here and then put it in a bowl, and then this is a whole bunch of garlic that you don't have to chop constantly. So that's a little chef tip. I will not charge you extra for that today. All right, so some garlic in here, a spoonful. I like a little extra garlic. I like it garlicky. And then we have our basil. So basil we have, and mint. So one of the other chefy tips I will teach you is how to chiffonade any kind of herb, a big leafed herb, I should say that, because not all herbs can be chiffonaded. But basically what you're doing is you're taking your leaves and you are layering them. So for this amount, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 leaves, big leaves of basil. Obviously, if they're smaller, you can use more. So then, now that they're all stacked, I'm going to roll them tightly. So then you have this, a little basil strip. And then what you're going to do with chiffonading means tiny ribbons. So you're going to take your knife and with your fingers back, your knife rocking back and forth, see, I just let go of it. So got to re-roll it, roll it up tight. And then you are going to just cut these very thinly. And this creates little ribbons of basil, mint, parsley. I don't even know if you can do it with parsley. I've never tried with parsley, but the big herbs. And they create pretty little ribbons, and that's going to work nice with our bruschetta. You can chop it up if you want finer, but I like the little ribbons, almost like the onions. It mimics those like little strips. And then with the mint, we're not going to do so much, but it is a nice accent to the bruschetta, which I've trialed and errored this part, because I was like, you're thinking, oh, mint and with tomatoes? Yeah, it works really well. And the mojitos. All right, so I'm going to pick a couple leaves. These might be harder. These are smaller mint leaves, so we'll work on this together about the chiffonade part. But about 10 or so leaves smaller. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You can just kind of press these together. Let's see how this works. And sometimes you can put the smaller leaves in with the bigger leaves and then kind of try and roll them up together. Some may escape you, but that is fine. All right, so I got that pretty. This, you're going to have to go a little bit slower, just like I am, because they are smaller and they want to get away from you. And then as you get to the end, I kind of move my hand away and then try and chop what's already there, just so you don't hurt yourself. Okay, that's that. So we have our sun-dried tomatoes, our grape tomatoes, or whatever tomatoes you have, our roasted red bell peppers, our thinly sliced red onions, mint, basil, and garlic. Now we're going to add some zhuzh. So, actually I'll just use this olive oil. That container, I don't know why I bought those containers. Those containers are hard to, I just wanted it to look nice. They're hard to handle, so I'm just going to use the jug. So about 1/4 cup of olive oil. And this is balsamic glaze. I do a little squirty squirt of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I will measure the salt and pepper. So we have salt, pepper. So I'm going to do a teaspoon of salt. And a 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. You can eyeball it if you want, but not today. Oh, and the most important part, mozzarella. This was also buy one, get one free today. But since we're putting it on the bread and the tomatoes are about this size, I bought little pearls of mozzarella. So they're kind of similar in shape and size. If you don't have the pearls, and the only reason I bought these because they were buy one, get one free, is you can buy the log of mozzarella or the mozzarella that's already sliced, and then you can just cut that up to the appropriate size of your tomatoes, whether you're using a regular tomato or a grape tomato. So we add the mozzarella. This looks so good. Wash my hands. I can smell our bread. That's one of the things I've learned over the years with cooking is not only visually knowing when things are done, but you can also start to smell things that are done. So the bread is actually done. Imagine that. Everyday cooks learning something. So the bread's done. Crispy, crispy, crispy. Again, 375. And those are going to cool down. Yum. Yum, yum, yum. So while those cool down, we'll get together with our bruschetta and just stir this around. Be gentle because there are tomatoes which are delicate and you don't want to break up everything. So just continue to stir, make sure the herbs are incorporated. This looks good. That looks really good. I used to bring this to like every party or birthday party and just everybody would just eat it up. So salsa or bruschetta, there's your party options that I recommend. And then with anything, we're gonna have to taste test. Make sure we have enough salt, make sure we have enough pepper. So that's all mixed. Grab a little spoon-a-rooney. I'm never gonna learn with this. I'm never gonna learn with this microphone. Every time I open a drawer. Every time. Every time I open the drawer. Okay. So we'll taste this. Use a little bit more salt and pepper. So about another half teaspoon. Yes, definitely. Awesome. Oh, this is gonna be so good with the bread. That's my bruschetta dance. All right, so I'm gonna put this in a nice little bowl. And again, this can be served right away. It can be chilled overnight. But doesn't that just look fantastic? Yum. That's a lot of bruschetta, but also too, I'm making it for some friends. This is not just for me. And then we'll have to try it on our bread. So move this out of the way. I feel like I'm dirtying a lot of spoons today, but don't want to double D up. All right. So you hear how crusty our bread is? It smells really nice. And then again, you want to have your ingredients be able to fit onto your piece of bread, toasted piece of bread. Yum. I think that's the perfect bite. I really think so. This is why you need to come cook with me, because we're making this, bruschetta. Yum. That's really good. This is happy food. This is really happy food. Bruschetta, easy. 6 ingredients. Took us a couple minutes. Toast the bread. This is really good. I haven't made this in a while. This is really good. Come cook with me.